Helen Ross never expected a simple family dinner to turn into a public humiliation, but that's exactly what happened when her sister Jenna made her grand announcement. Jenna raised her glass with a bright, sugary smile. "Everyone meet my fiancé, Derek Miles. He's a real soldier. Not like Helen." Their parents chuckled. Then Jenna tipped her wine glass, sending red wine down Helen's dress uniform. Helen froze. But Derek didn't. His eyes darted to the challenge coin at Helen's belt, and the color drained from his face. "Jenna," he whispered urgently. "Stop. Do you even know who she is?" Jenna scoffed. "She's Helen. She files reports for a living." Derek shook his head slowly. "That's not what she does." Helen stood still, discipline tightening every muscle, humiliation burning beneath her skin. Linda and Gary looked confused, not concerned. They were used to Jenna's digs and Helen's silence. Helen turned slightly, ready to leave, but Derek spoke again, louder this time. "I can't marry someone who treats people like this." Gasps filled the room. Jenna stared at him in disbelief. Helen said nothing at all. Silence had always served her better than explanations no one wanted to hear. Helen had served 9 years in the army, stationed at Fort Meade, working signals intelligence inside ASAF. Her family never asked what she actually did. She couldn't explain anyway. Classified meant no details. So they created their own narrative. Jenna teased. "Helen's too busy typing to help us move." Gary clapped her shoulder and added, "Someone has to push papers." Helen let it slide. Operational security came before pride. But once Jenna started dating Derek, a ranger who enjoyed attention, the jokes sharpened. Helen's uniform became entertainment, and every family gathering turned into another stage. In February, Jenna invited Helen to a gathering she claimed really mattered. Helen had just finished a 48-hour shift tracking a hostile network overseas, but she went anyway. The apartment buzzed with Derek's ranger friends, loud and brimming with energy. Jenna threw an arm around Helen. "Guys, meet my sister, the office warrior." Laughter erupted. One ranger asked, "So what do you really do? Actual intel or computer stuff?" Helen started to answer, but Jenna cut in. "Computer stuff. Only computer stuff." Even Derek chuckled. Helen forced a smile, stayed an hour, then slipped out, exhausted and invisible. Things got worse weeks later. Helen wired her father $3,800 for car repairs he said he urgently needed. 2 days later, Jenna posted photos from an expensive restaurant. Champagne, caviar, designer heels. Helen called Gary. He admitted he'd given Jenna most of the money for Derek's birthday celebration. Sitting in her car outside Fort Meade, Helen felt anger rise. But her secure phone vibrated. "Developing situation in East Africa. Report immediately." She shut her eyes, inhaled, and set the family chaos aside. Duty called first. She didn't know it yet, but the breaking point had already begun to form. April brought Jenna's engagement announcement. Helen had just left the SCIF after a 16-hour shift when she turned on her phone in the parking lot. 17 missed calls from Jenna. When Helen finally called back, Jenna exploded. "I'm engaged, and you ignored me. Derek says real military makes time for family." Helen leaned against her car, exhausted. "I was working." Jenna snapped. "Stop pretending you're special forces. You work in an office, Helen." Then came the demand. "You're paying for the engagement party." Ruth's Chris. Private room. Helen exhaled. "I'll attend," she said calmly. "But I'm not paying." Jenna went silent. "What?" Helen repeated. "I'm not paying. After everything I've done for you." Jenna screamed. Helen ended the call. The next morning, Gary left a voicemail lecturing her about family obligations. Helen ignored it and returned to work. That evening, she visited the ER after slicing her hand on a metal filing cabinet drawer. The nurse, dark-haired, steady-eyed, introduced herself as Nora Hayes. "A filing cabinet injury," Nora teased. Helen smirked. Rough day at the office. Nora stitched the wound with smooth confidence. Military, she asked. Helen blinked. How'd you know? Posture. And you didn't flinch. 10 days later, Helen returned to the ER for suture removal. Nora remembered her. They talked, soft, easy conversation that didn't demand details. When Nora handed her the aftercare sheet, she added, "If you want coffee sometime, let me know." They went for coffee the next week. Felt simple. No judgment. No mockery. No forced laughter. 3 months later, as the engagement party approached, Nora listened to Helen vent. "Your sister wants you to pay $3,000. Nora asked, eyebrows raised. Helen nodded. "And when I refused, she melted down." Nora sighed. "That isn't family. That's entitlement." Nora's perspective hit Helen harder than she expected. "If you give in," Nora said gently, "you're teaching them that disrespect works." Helen stared at her phone, Jenna's angry texts still unread. Nora squeezed her hand. "Set boundaries. People who depend on your silence won't like it, but they'll learn." The next week the invitation arrived. Jenna listed Helen as attending, but excluded Nora. Helen texted, "I'm bringing Nora." Jenna replied instantly, "No. Family only. No random girlfriends." Nora looked at the message and shrugged. "Bold, considering you're their unpaid bank." Helen typed back, "She's coming." Jenna called. Helen ignored it. A week before the party, Helen was summoned to Chief Warrant Officer Dana's office. "Ross, that Target package you built saved lives," Dana said. "But you look like hell. When did you last sleep?" Helen hesitated. "A few hours yesterday." "Real sleep," Dana pressed. Helen said nothing. Dana sighed. "You have 89 days of unused leave. Use them." 2 weeks. "Mandatory." Helen nodded. That Saturday, she put on her dress uniform. Nora wore a simple black dress. Before entering the private room at Ruth's Chris, Helen told the hostess, "If there's a card on file under my name, remove it." Inside the private room, 40 guests filled tables draped in white and gold. Jenna's smile dropped when she saw Nora beside Helen. Derek lightly grabbed Jenna's arm, whispering something that made her scowl but stay quiet. Helen ignored the single empty chair shoved in a corner, dragged 2 chairs to the center, and sat with Nora. Linda stared. Gary frowned. Jenna glared like Helen had violated a sacred rule. Dinner began. Conversations swirled around them, but Helen stayed silent, focused, waiting. Nora leaned close and whispered, "You okay?" Helen nodded. "I'm just done playing their game." Around 7:30, Jenna and Derek began whispering fiercely. Jenna pointed toward Helen repeatedly. Derek kept shaking his head. Finally, he walked over and quietly said, "Helen, can we talk outside?" Helen followed him into the hallway. Derek looked nothing like the confident ranger from Jenna's parties. He looked ashamed. "Jenna planned some toast tonight. She wants to call me a warrior and publicly imply you push papers. I told her to stop." Helen didn't react. Derek continued, "I realized. You never defend yourself. That means either you're a doormat, or someone who doesn't need to prove anything to people who wouldn't understand anyway." Helen raised an eyebrow. Derek swallowed. "You're not a doormat. I should have shut it down sooner." "What did Jenna say when you told her to stop?" Helen asked. "She said I was being dramatic. That you don't care." Helen held his gaze. "I care." Derek nodded slowly. "Then I'm shutting it down tonight. If she tries it, we leave." Helen said nothing. They returned to the dining room, tension hanging like fog. Derek's team sensed something. Several sat straighter, watching Jenna carefully. Nora reached for Helen's hand beneath the table. Helen didn't pull away. At 8:30, Jenna stood with her wine glass lifted high. "Thank you all for coming," she chirped. The room quieted. Helen felt Nora stiffen beside her. "This year has been amazing," Jenna continued. "I met my soulmate, a true hero. Derek, you're everything I ever wanted. Polite applause. Then Jenna's smile twisted. And I want to thank my big sister Helen, who managed to step away from her very important office work to be here. A ripple of laughter. Derek's jaw clenched. Jenna pressed on. I know it must be hard seeing what real military service looks like. Derek's voice snapped across the room. Jenna. Stop. Jenna's eyes widened. What? It's just a joke. Derek stepped forward. It's disrespect. And she does care. The room fell silent. Everyone looked at Helen. She stood slowly, looked at Jenna, then at her parents. Stop, Helen said quietly. The word settled heavy and final. She turned toward the door. Jenna's voice rose behind her. Helen, you can't just walk out on my special night. Linda stood. Helen, stop being dramatic. Your sister is just teasing. Helen kept moving. Nora followed. Derek stood frozen, torn between the two sisters. Helen reached the doorway when it happened. Jenna hurled her wine glass. Derek lunged to block it, but Jenna leaned sideways. The red wine splashed across Helen's chest, soaking through the fabric. Gasps echoed through the room. Helen froze, dripping, heart pounding. Derek spun around. Are you out of your mind? She was leaving. Jenna sputtered. She can't ruin my night. Derek's voice sharpened. You ruined it yourself. Helen shifted slightly, and something metallic slid from her inner pocket, hitting the floor with a distinct clink. The challenge coin rolled and settled near Derek's shoe. Derek stared at the coin like it was a live explosive. His entire body went stiff. Oh no, he whispered. Jenna frowned. What? What's that stupid coin? Derek didn't look at her. Do you know what this is? He asked Helen. Helen didn't answer. Derek's breathing sped up. Where did you get it? Again Helen said nothing. One of Derek's teammates whispered. Is that? Derek snapped. Don't. His voice held a warning edge. He looked at Helen again, then stepped back like the truth had hit him in the chest. Helen, my God. Helen reached the doorway when it happened. Jenna hurled her wine glass. Derek lunged to block it, but Jenna leaned sideways. The red wine splashed across Helen's chest, soaking through the fabric. Gasps echoed through the room. Helen froze, dripping, heart pounding. Derek spun around. Are you out of your mind? She was leaving. Jenna sputtered. She can't ruin my night. Derek's voice sharpened. You ruined it yourself. Helen shifted slightly, and something metallic slid from her inner pocket, hitting the floor with a distinct clink. The challenge coin rolled and settled near Derek's shoe. Derek stared at the coin like it was a live explosive. His entire body went stiff. Oh no, he whispered. Jenna frowned. What? What's that stupid coin? Derek didn't look at her. Do you know what this is? He asked Helen. Helen didn't answer. Derek's breathing sped up. Where did you get it? Again Helen said nothing. One of Derek's teammates whispered. Is that? Derek snapped. Don't. His voice held a warning edge. He looked at Helen again, then stepped back like the truth had hit him in the chest. Helen, my God. Paragraph 18. Then Derek straightened his spine. His voice shifted, formal, controlled, reverent. Staff Sergeant Ross, I owe you an apology. The entire room froze. Linda gasped. Jenna stared like she'd been slapped. Helen said quietly, Not here. Derek lowered his head. Then he turned to Jenna. We're done. Jenna blinked rapidly. What? The engagement is off. You can't break up with me because of her. She's nobody. She's not nobody, Derek said. She's done more in one shift than I'll do in my entire career. And you made me mock her. You humiliated her. You assaulted her. Jenna shrieked. I didn't assault anyone. Derek gestured toward Helen's soaked uniform. You threw wine on a service member in uniform. That is assault. Derek's team stood as one. He nodded once. They exited in disciplined silence. At the door, Derek paused and looked back at Helen. "Thank you for your service. Your real service." Then he left. The room broke into chaos. Jenna sobbing, Linda shouting, Gary trying to calm them. Linda grabbed Helen's arm. "Helen, wait. You can't leave. You need to fix this. Jenna is devastated." Helen pulled free. "She did this to herself." Linda's voice sharpened. "But your job isn't even important." Helen stopped cold. "You've believed that for years." Gary stepped forward. "Honey, you're upset. Let's calm down and—" Helen shook her head. "I'm calm. And I'm done." Jenna wailed behind them. Helen walked out with Nora close beside her. Outside, under the cool night sky, Nora exhaled. "Well, that was intense." Helen nodded. "She threw wine on me. And my parents laughed." Nora studied her face. "Are you okay?" Helen thought about it. "Yeah. For the first time I think I am." They got in the car and drove away. The next morning, Helen slept until noon, the first real rest she'd gotten in days. When she finally checked her phone, the messages flooded in. Jenna had left 10 voicemails, each one blaming Helen for ruining her life. Linda insisted Helen's behavior caused the breakup. Gary claimed Derek's team was spreading rumors, and that Helen needed to correct the narrative. Helen deleted every message without listening to the end. Later, while she and Nora ate takeout on the couch, Nora said softly, "You know what's coming next, right?" Helen looked at her. "The apology that isn't an apology." Nora nodded. Day 2 brought Gary himself. Helen opened her apartment door after his 4th round of knocking. "We need to talk," he said. Helen stayed in the doorway. "No, we don't." He launched into a speech about Jenna being heartbroken, about the cancelled wedding, about how Helen could fix everything by telling people it was a misunderstanding. "You want me to lie about my job," Helen said. "So Jenna looks better." Gary sputtered. "No, it's not lying, it's protecting family." Helen's voice stayed level. "I protected family for 9 years. Sent money, showed up when needed, stayed quiet. I'm done." Gary ran out of arguments. Helen took a breath. "When you asked me for car repair money, you gave most of it to Jenna. That's theft. And when she threw wine on me, you laughed." He opened his mouth, closed it, then whispered, "We didn't know your job was important." Helen stared at him. "You never asked." He stepped back. "Leave." He tried one last plea. "Your mother." But Helen's voice cut sharp. "Leave." He closed the door. Nora came from the kitchen with 2 mugs of tea. "Well?" she asked. Helen exhaled. "He still thinks I owe them." On day 3, Helen reported to Chief Warrant Officer Dana after being summoned unexpectedly. "Sit," Dana said. Helen obeyed. "You're on leave, but I'm dragging you in because I'm concerned." Her tone softened. "When you said you had a family thing, you looked like you were walking into a fight." Helen stayed quiet. Dana asked, "Did anyone put hands on you?" Helen hesitated. "My sister threw a drink on me while I was in uniform." Dana's jaw tightened. "Understood." She folded her hands. "You're one of the best analysts we have. But you don't owe access to people who don't respect you." Dana leaned forward. "This job is hard enough. Don't let people tear you down when you're not here saving lives." Helen nodded. "Yes, ma'am." "Good," Dana said. "Your leave stands. 2 weeks. Rest. Get your boundaries straight. Come back ready." Helen left the office feeling something unfamiliar. Validation. That evening Nora called. "How are you holding up?" Helen admitted she didn't know. Nora hesitated. "I have news." Helen tensed. "Good or bad?" "Good. Hopkins offered me a trauma position. Better pay, better hours, and closer to you." Helen felt warmth bloom in her chest. "Then take it." Nora accepted the job and moved halfway between Baltimore and Helen's base. Helen helped her unpack over several days. One box was labeled BOUNDARIES in huge marker letters. Helen raised an eyebrow. What's in there? Nora deadpanned. Bubble wrap. For defending personal space. Helen almost laughed, something she hadn't done much of lately. On day 5 of her leave, they were assembling a bookshelf when Helen's phone rang. Unknown number. She answered cautiously. Helen Ross. A male voice responded, older, rough. This is Frank Ross. Your uncle. Helen blinked. She hadn't spoken to him in years. Frank didn't waste time. Your parents are telling people you had some kind of breakdown. That you attacked Jenna at the engagement party. They're making you sound unstable. Helen stared at the wall. They said what? Your father called me yesterday, Frank said. Told me you threatened Derek. Said they're considering requesting a wellness check. Nora froze beside her, eyes wide. Helen put the phone on speaker. None of that is true, Helen said. I know, Frank replied. So tell me what actually happened. Helen explained everything. The money. Jokes. The wine. Derek recognizing her coin. The breakup. Frank's silence stretched. Then he muttered. That little maniac threw wine on you? Yeah, Helen said. And my parents laughed. Frank exhaled hard. They've been covering for Jenna her whole life. Anything goes wrong. Blame Helen. I'm tired of it. He paused. Listen, I can correct the story with the family. And if they try that wellness check crap, I'll shut it down. Helen swallowed the tightness in her throat. Thanks, Frank. You need anything, you call me, he said firmly. And don't let those people make you think you're the problem. You're a good kid. After hanging up, Nora looked at Helen. They're trying to rewrite history. Helen sat heavily on the floor. Yeah. Nora crossed her arms. You going to let them? Helen thought for a long moment. No, they drafted an email to Linda, Gary, and Jenna. Clean, factual, emotion-free. No more financial support. No more unscheduled visits. No more contact unless respect is given. Any false rumors would be corrected publicly. Continued harassment would result in legal action. Nora read it aloud once more. Ready. Helen nodded. Send it. She hit send. 30 seconds later, Linda responded. Linda's email was long. 3 paragraphs of guilt, excuses, and layered manipulation. Jenna was only joking. You're overreacting. Family forgives. You're breaking my heart. Helen read it once, expression flat. Nora skimmed it and sighed. As expected. No accountability. Just emotional bait. Helen deleted the email without replying. The next months passed quietly. She returned to work, focused on operations, slept more, breathed more. Nora thrived in her new trauma position. For the first time in years, Helen felt something like peace. But her family wasn't done, not yet. By July, Helen's work stabilized into a rhythm again. She was selected for promotion to Sergeant First Class, a milestone she'd worked toward for years. Chief Dana also recommended her for a Special Operations Command targeting position in Florida. It was rare. It was career-defining. Helen accepted without hesitation. Weeks later, Nora received an offer for a trauma surgery fellowship at Tampa General. Looks like we're moving, she said with a grin. Helen smiled. Yeah. Together. They packed Nora's place first, then Helen's, driving south in August toward a life that felt finally, beautifully separate from the chaos behind them. Florida brought quiet mornings, long walks, and a sense of safety Helen hadn't realized she'd been missing. Her unit respected her. Nora's fellowship kept her engaged and fulfilled. They settled into an apartment near MacDill Air Force Base, spent weekends exploring markets and beaches, started building a steady circle of friends. Helen didn't hear from her parents. Not once, but twice a month Frank called to check in. Your dad's healing, he'd say. Your mom's pretending nothing happened. Jenna's bouncing from job to job. Helen listened but rarely asked questions. The distance felt healthy, clean, necessary. Then one November evening, Helen came home from a 14-hour shift and froze. Someone sat on the outdoor stairs leading to their apartment, thin, trembling mascara streaked. Jenna. She stood sharply when she saw Helen. "Please," she said, voice shaking. "I need to talk to you." Helen kept her distance. "How did you get my address?" "Mom gave it to me." Jenna wiped her face. "Helen, everything is falling apart. Derek won't talk to me. People in town think I'm cruel. I can't date anyone military. I lost my job." Helen folded her arms. "What do you want?" "I'm sorry," Jenna said quickly, words tumbling out. "I'm sorry for the jokes. The money. The wine. I was jealous, okay? I didn't understand." "You understood perfectly," Helen said. "You just didn't care." The front door opened. Nora stepped out and joined Helen. Jenna stared. "Who's this?" "Nora," Helen said. "My girlfriend." Jenna scoffed. "You brought a stranger into our family business." Helen's voice stayed calm. "She's not a stranger. You are." Jenna's expression twisted. "Fine. Be like that. But you'll come back. You always do. Family doesn't forget." Helen opened the door. "Correction, we're just related." Helen called Frank after Jenna left. He sighed heavily. "She drove 6 hours to ambush you. Jesus." "She wants access," Helen said. "Not reconciliation." Frank didn't argue. "I'll talk to your folks." "But Helen, brace yourself. They don't give up easily. They think love means control." Helen felt Nora slip her hand into hers. "I'm not going back," Helen said firmly. "I know," Frank replied. "Just remember, you're breaking a pattern they built their whole lives. They'll push. You push back." Helen hung up and leaned into Nora's shoulder. "I just want peace." Nora whispered. "You're making it." 2 weeks later, an envelope appeared in their mailbox. Handwritten. From Linda. 6 pages. Helen read half a paragraph. Claims that the military changed her. Claims she'd abandoned the family. Pleas to fix things for Jenna's sake. Helen shredded the letter. December brought Gary, who showed up at the MacDill gate demanding to see her. The guards called Helen. "I don't know anyone by that name," she said. Gary was escorted off base. 30 minutes later he left a voicemail. "Helen, I drove 8 hours. How can you be this cold?" Helen blocked his number again. Nora hugged her tightly. In January, Jenna emailed again. Subject: "Please read this." 12 paragraphs about therapy, jealousy, her pain, her embarrassment, yet still no genuine apology. Nothing about accountability. Nothing about respecting Helen's boundaries. Helen closed the email without responding. Work continued. Nora thrived. They cooked dinner together, went biking on weekends, explored Tampa neighborhoods. For the first time, Helen experienced what stability felt like. Quiet mornings, peaceful evenings, no exploding phone, no guilt-laced obligations. The silence from home wasn't threatening anymore. It was relief. It was space to breathe. Then, one afternoon in March, Frank called. "Helen, you better sit down." Her chest tightened. "What happened?" "Your dad. Heart attack. He's at me. Critical." Helen closed her eyes. Nora sat beside her instantly. "Does Mom want me there?" Helen asked. "She does," Frank said. "But you need to be prepared. They're already telling people you abandoned him." Helen's jaw clenched. Nora took her hand. "Whatever you choose," Nora said softly. "Choose it for you, not for their story." Helen nodded slowly. "Frank, I'll come. But if they try anything, I'm gone." The flight north was quiet. Frank met them at the hospital and led them to the ICU waiting room. Linda sat pale and red-eyed. Jenna was beside her, arms folded. Both stiffened when they saw Helen. "You came," Linda whispered. Helen nodded. "How is he?" "Touch and go," Linda said. "He might not wake up." Jenna stepped forward. "We need to talk. Privately." "No," Helen said. Jenna's mouth tightened. "Dad is dying and you can't put aside." "Jenna," Helen said calmly, "if you say one more word to blame me, I walk out now." Jenna shut her mouth instantly. Her father survived the night. The next morning, Helen was allowed into his room alone. Gary looked frail, older than she'd ever seen him. "Helen," he whispered. "You came." She nodded. "Yeah." Tears welled in his eyes. "I'm sorry. I should have defended you. I should have stopped her." Helen exhaled. 9 years, Dad. You had 9 years. He nodded weakly. "Can you forgive me?" Helen thought for a long moment. "Maybe. But if you recover, things change. I'm not your bank. I'm not your punching bag. If you want a relationship, you earn it." He whispered. "Okay." Helen left the room. Nora was waiting. She squeezed Helen's hand. "You okay?" Helen nodded slowly. "Yeah. Because this time, I chose myself." Months later, in the Florida sunlight, Helen and Nora moved into their first house. A small place near the bay. Quiet, warm, safe. Helen stood on the porch one morning and realized something profound. She finally had a home. Not because of who she came from, but because of who she became. The end.